What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to find x so that f of x is equal to 0, okay? So this is pretty straightforward. All we have to do is set f of x equal to 0. So we're just going to set the equation equal to 0, and then we're going to solve for x. Okay, so for this first example, we have f of x is equal to negative 2x plus 10. So here, we're going to get 0 is equal to negative 2x plus 10. All right, so solving for x, the next thing we can do is get rid of this 10 by subtracting 10 from both sides. This side they die. 0 minus 10 is equal to negative 10, and that's equal to negative 2x. All right, next we can get rid of this negative 2 by dividing both sides by negative 2. So on this side, they once again die, and all we're left with is x is equal to, looks like positive 5. All right, so that would be our final answer right here. All right, here's the next example. So now we have f of x is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 6. So again, it's going to be the exact same steps. We're just going to plug in a 0 for f of x and solve for x. All right, so here we're going to get that 0 is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 6. All right, so as you can see, we have a quadratic right here, right? So that means we can factor this bad boy. So we're going to split it up into two factors, so two sets of parentheses. Okay, so first we can split up this x squared as x times x, and then we need two numbers right here that multiply together to this last number, positive 6, but they have to add up to this middle number, negative 5. So in this case, that would be a negative 2 and a negative 3. Okay, and again, this is all equal to 0. All right, great. So now that we've factored this guy, you can see we have two factors, right? X minus 2 and x minus 3. So in order to solve for x here, we just have to set each of these factors equal to 0, right? Because everything's equal to 0. So here, down here, we're going to say x minus 2 is equal to 0, and we're going to say x minus 3 is equal to 0. All right, so then here we can see that for this equation, x must be equal to positive 2, and for this one, x must be equal to positive 3. All right, so we get two solutions, 2 and 3. All right, now let's do one with a fraction because I know those are our favorites. All right, so here we have f of x is equal to 12 minus x squared all over 8. All right, so again, it's going to be the same exact first step. We're just going to plug in 0 right here for f of x. So we get 0 is equal to 12 minus x squared over 8. All right, now the first thing we can do is get rid of this denominator, the 8, by multiplying both sides by 8, right? So then on this side, those cancel out, and we're left with 12 minus x squared is equal to 0. Okay, great. So we're trying to get x by itself. So this time, let's move this x to the left side, all right? So let's add x squared to both sides. So then on this side, they cancel out, and we're left with x squared is equal to just 12, all right? Now, let's scroll down, because we're going to need some extra room here. Now, to solve for x, we need to get rid of this exponent, the 2, and we can do that by simply taking the square root of both sides. So then on this side, the square root, or the radical, and the squared exponent cancel out, and all we're left with is x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 12. Okay, now the square root of 12, we can actually simplify this radical right here. So let's write it up here. So the square root of 12, we can actually split up as, or we can first rewrite it as the square root of 4 times 3. Okay, so now that I split 12 up into its two different factors, now we can split both of these numbers up into their own radicals, right, into their own square roots. So here we can rewrite this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, now we can simplify this first radical, right? So the square root of 4, that's equal to just 2. So here we simply get 2 times the square root of 3. All right, so that's what we're going to write here. So we're going to say that x is equal to plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. All right, so as you can see, we get two answers right here, right? X is equal to positive 2 root 3 and x is equal to negative 2 root 3. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's do this last one right here. So now we have f of x is equal to x cubed minus x squared minus 3x plus 3. All right, so here you can see we have a cubic function, and we know that because the biggest exponent here is a 3. All right, so in any case, let's start at the very beginning. So we're just going to plug in a 0 right here, right? So we're going to get that 0 is equal to x cubed minus x squared minus 3x plus 3, okay? Now, with these cubic functions, you're going to see that often you can factor these by grouping. And the way that you do that is by simply grouping the first two terms together and grouping the last two terms together, all right? If you need a refresher on how to factor by grouping, I'll link a video to that in the card above and in the description below. But in any case, we're just going to keep chugging along here. So then here, we're going to get that 0 is equal to, now for this first set of parentheses, you see we have x cubed minus x squared. So the biggest factor that we can take out of both of these terms would be an x squared, right? So let's factor out an x squared right here in front. And so what are we going to be left with inside of these parentheses? Well, it looks like we're going to be left with x minus 1. Okay, great. Now for this second set of parentheses, the biggest number we can factor out from both of these terms would be a negative 3, right? So we can take out a negative 3 from this first one and from the second one. So we're going to pull out a negative 3, and then in these parentheses, we're going to be left with, looks like positive x minus 1. Remember, whenever you factor something out, it's like dividing by that same number, okay? So if I'm going to pull out a negative 3, it's like I'm dividing both of these numbers by negative 3, dividing this one by negative 3 and this one by negative 3, all right? So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is just equal to positive 1, right? And positive 1 times x is equal to just x. And then positive 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1, or in other words, minus 1, right? Just in case you're wondering where we're getting these numbers from. All right, so then here we're going to get 0 is equal to, well, first of all, you can see in these set of parentheses, we have the exact same factor, right? X minus 1 and x minus 1. And that's what should happen, all right? So for this first factor, for this first set of parentheses, we're going to get x minus 1. And then for our other set of parentheses, we're going to combine the two terms that we factored out. So that's this x squared and this minus 3, all right? So x squared minus 3. Okay, so as you can see, we once again have two factors, right? So in order to solve for x, we just have to set each of these factors equal to 0, right? Because again, everything's equal to 0. So for this first one, we're going to say x minus 1 is equal to 0. And for this other one, we're going to say x squared minus 3 is equal to 0. All right, so this one's pretty straightforward, right? We can see that x must be equal to positive 1, right? So that's one solution right there. Now for this one, we have to work with it a little bit. So we're trying to solve for x. So the first thing we can do is get rid of this 3 by adding 3 to both sides. So then here we get that x squared is equal to positive 3. Okay, now to solve for x again, we can simply take the square root of both sides. So then again, those cancel out. And we're left with x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3, right? 3 is prime number, so we can't break that down. We can't simplify that anymore. So then this would be our final two solutions, or 3 in total, right? So we get x is equal to 1, x is equal to positive root 3, and x is equal to negative root 3. Boom! So if you found the video helpful, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below.